The cost of living crisis is affecting all of us, and that inevitably means we have less money to spend on luxuries. And when it comes to our health, wellness, and beauty, we think that we need expensive treatments if we want to see tangible benefits.
But actually, are we looking in the wrong place? And should we be focusing on our nutrition to improve our skin, our well-being, and generally our lives?
On this week's episode of Money Unfiltered, we speak to Jennifer Medhurst, aka the Imperfect Nutritionist, about how we can all use the power of nutrition to improve our sleep, stress, health, and general well-being. So fabulous to have you here.
Thank you.
And so exciting that this is book launch week. Or was it last week?
It's 3 weeks ago now.
Oh, wow.
So I think we're at the start of week 3.
Okay, This is very exciting.
Yeah.
Well, we have it here, the Imperfect Nutritionist, which we'll talk all about. But what I would really love to start with is to talk about your own journey, because I know that your career as a nutritionist actually started as a product of your own health journey.
Yeah.
So for those people who are skeptical about the power of nutrition and the benefits it can have, can you just tell us a bit about your experience and how you realized like how powerful nutrition can actually be when it comes to your health?
So I actually started as a lawyer. So I was training as a lawyer, and then I got very sick with something called chronic fatigue syndrome, which used to be, the old name is ME. And that kind of decimated my career in a way that I was never expecting. I then had to give up my job and move back home with my parents, which is every 20-something-year-old's dream, of course.
Absolutely.
When he finally got out. And I really wasn't expecting it at all. And I didn't think it was a real illness. In my head, I was like, it's something that actually you get diagnosed with when they don't know like what to diagnose you with.
Sure.
That was my mentality. I was like, this isn't real. They don't know what's wrong. I'm just going to ignore it. And the worst thing you can do when something's wrong is ignore it. So fast forward a couple of years later, I've tried everything the NHS has to offer, absolutely everything, and nothing's improving with my health. And I'm really sick. And for those that don't know how it kind of manifests, some of the symptoms are extreme stomach cramps, brain fog, aching joints, to the point where, I was lying in bed and my mother was washing me and feeding me. Like, that's how bad it got. I couldn't move. And even lifting up a glass of water next to the bed, that pain you get where your muscles burn when you've worked out really hard, that from just lifting a glass of water. So
I just cannot imagine.
It's awful. I was lying there in bed and I thought, is this my life? Am I ever going to have a normal job? Am I ever going to get married? Am I ever going to have kids? Like, how am I going to do this? And I was totally lost. Like, nothing mainstream medicine had to offer was giving me any solutions. And it was out of total desperation that a friend's father said, like, has she tried a nutritionist? And he'd had cancer, so he'd kind of been a little bit down that road. And I was desperate, and as you do when you're desperate, you try anything, and went to go and see this nutritionist. And it wasn't like I was better in a month, but certainly in the space of a month, after years of being ill, I had felt some improvement. So I was like, maybe there's something to this nutrition malarkey. Because genuinely there was a time when I was like, I had no idea what you put in your mouth actually affected your health. I used to go around saying, as if it has any relationship whatsoever. Like, what a load of nonsense. I thought it was kind of like this crazy, kooky thing for, hippies and stuff. And then, as I like to joke, like the proof was in the pudding. I actually went and I ate differently and I felt differently. And so the debate was over. Like, there's something to this. So I took those legal skills that I wasn't using, and I went and I researched like every single thing I could find about nutrition and healthy eating, and very quickly discovered a passion for cooking, which, I couldn't cook anything. It was actually a running joke at university if I ever threw a dinner party, which was very rare because I'm such a terrible cook. I would buy those like microwavable mac and cheeses from Sainsbury's and like put them all in a big pot. And then as people would come in through the door, I'd kind of like grate up some cheese and sprinkle over the top and just be like, guys, it's ready. Just perfect timing.
Oh my God.
So that was the level of my cooking skills. So things moved on quite substantially, but I was genuinely amazed that you could get these things called ingredients and turn them into food. I was like, do other people know about this? So I started developing recipes. Also, because a lot of the recipes at the time were quite complicated. They maybe had like 20 ingredients, half of which I hadn't heard of.
Yeah.
And it felt like health was quite like elitist and a bit exclusive, and I wanted to kind of normalize it. And so my recipes all revolved around easy to find, accessible ingredients that you could get on your way home from work, like local Sainsbury's, Tesco's, whatever, like supermarkets most people go to on their way home from work, that you could then cook within half an hour of getting home, like relatively easy, because my cooking skills were pretty mediocre still at the time. And that tastes really, really delicious. Like, I'm a foodie at heart. Like, I really love my food. It needs to taste good. It needs to taste delicious. It's also your evening's entertainment as well when you get home from work. Like, it's kind of like, well, I've worked all day and now I have to have some boring food and go to bed. So no, it needs to taste good. And it also happens to be nutritious. So I started formulating recipes all based on this premise: accessible ingredients, easy to cook, delicious and nutritious. And yeah, it resonated. Like, the blog took off. I was really lucky. And then the blog, actually, some people ended up contacting me and they're like, you're cooking all these recipes. Can you cater events? And, you know, I was still like finding my feet back into working life at the time. So I'm like, of course I can cater. Never catered anything. never a thing. And so off I go. My first catering job was actually with Warehouse, the clothing brand. Thank you. I'm sorry I lied to you. And then I started catering fashion events and film shoots and things like that, which was really interesting, really exciting, and also was great because people were picking it up and photographing it, and I was getting more jobs. And so I kind of became like a bit of a health food caterer in that like fashion PR film industry. And then quite quickly the health and wellness movement arrived quite aggressively in London, and people kind of didn't know who to turn to and who to ask questions to. And I became a kind of little go-to person, cooking all these healthy recipes. And quite quickly I realized, I was like, this is complicated. I'm going to go and need to retrain if I want to actually speak with any kind of authority on this matter. So back to school I go, another 3 years studying to be a nutritionist. And that kind of sort of takes us up to date and where we are now. Yeah. But it's been a journey.
I mean, one thing that you mentioned there, which really kind of stood out, is this idea that the health and well-being world has this sense, I guess, of being a little bit elitist. Yes. From your perspective, where do you think that comes from? Because does it actually have to be expensive to be healthy and to eat nutritiously?
I'm really glad you touched on this, because it's something that's actually really important to me, and it's actually the kind of the ethos that underpins the Imperfect Nutritionist. Like, the whole idea of the Imperfect Nutritionist is meant to be accessible. It's not for the perfect people. I felt very strongly when I first started trying to be healthy that there was this version of health which was these beautiful women in the yoga pants with their green juices, and like they were getting everything perfect, and I was like, God, that's just not me. If I buy stuff for a green juice, it goes off in my fridge before I've got a chance of it turning into a smoothie. I'm like, I don't even know how to do that. And then there's also that collection of people that, you know, they eat junk food the whole time, they don't care about it. But there was this great swathe of people in the middle that actually represent the majority, the imperfect people, as I like to call them. And I felt no one was really talking to them. And so I wanted to speak to them because they are me. Yeah. And I felt like I had something quite valuable to add to the conversation, because I'd come to this way of being as an adult. I had that very busy job, and I was very time poor, and it's a huge kind of change to the way that you're thinking and your habit formation, in terms of like, you've eaten in a certain way your entire life, and then suddenly you're expected to do something completely different in your adult life. It's really difficult. And so I wanted to make it really accessible and really like doable for people. So instead of these like big diet and lifestyle overhauls, to actually make it like little changes and little improvements. As I'm sure, as you guys know, like, habit formation is all about starting small and attaching them to the habits you already do. And so I really wanted to give people a realistic approach that was underpinned with good evidence as well, because there was a ton of conflicting information, and still kind of is. And it's like, I don't know who to trust. I don't know who to believe. Like, what should I really been doing? And I see this in my clinic a lot. People come to me and they're like trying so hard to be healthy and do everything right, and through no fault of their own, just misinformation, they're making mistakes that are impacting their health. And that's so frustrating for me, because there's so many things we can't control in this world, and access to accurate information just shouldn't be one of them. So I thought that was actually the premise of the book, was like, let's put everything that I like painstakingly learned through my own health experience, painstakingly learned through running a nutrition clinic, down in one book, save everyone the time that I had to spend figuring it all out and working it all out, in a really accessible, like, fun way that makes sense to someone who actually maybe isn't a trained nutritionist, or isn't like naturally someone who goes out to their garden picking their organic vegetables and cooking everything from scratch. Like, I think it's a really accessible guide that can work for anyone, I hope. I'm starting to get feedback. I'm only in week 3, but that's certainly the feedback I'm starting to get. And actually had a really interesting bit of feedback, which is like, it's a book about kindness to yourself, which is actually,
love that.
It's not something that I was consciously thinking about when I wrote it, but actually I think that is very much about the imperfect Nutritionist, like actually it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to make mistakes. Forgive yourself, be kind to yourself. And I think that's really important.
And it's so needed in the world we live in of like everything being Instagram perfect. And
yeah, exactly. Just realistic. And I think maybe I think that speaks to women as well. There's so much pressure on us in terms of like how we look and how we feel. And I really like the fact of like giving people like a get out of jail free card. It's okay. You can make mistakes. I get so many people on my social media, like TikTok or Instagram, contacting me being like, oh my God, I ate this. And, am I going to get really fat? Am I going to have really bad skin? Like, I had a weekend with my girlfriends and we binged out on stuff and like late at night and I drank loads. And I really actually love being that person that can go, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not about what you do one meal, one day. It's about the overall pattern over weeks, months, years. And because I've been that like 13-year-old girl, or 20-year-old girl even, like freaking out. And I love to provide that support and accurate information. That's not what's important. What's much more important is what you're doing overall, and actually also your mental health. Like stress is going to cause so much more of an impact on your body than eating a McDonald's will do.
Well,
for once.
You've touched on a few of them there. And what I'd love to talk about is some of the other ways that nutrition, or some of the specific ways that nutrition can actually improve your life. Because, we're in this cost of living crisis. The NHS is so overwhelmed. Like people are genuinely struggling to access health services. And I do think it's more important than ever to take responsibility for our own health and our own well-being. And like the power's in our hand and with accessible tools. Great. So my question to you is like, what can we do? How can we use the power of nutrition and food to improve our lives?
You touched on something that's actually really close to my heart. I just want to pick up on it a little bit, which is actually the way that we practice healthcare in this country is very reactionary based.
Absolutely.
I love the NHS. I'm English.
I
love the NHS. They do a fantastic job. But
we love the NHS.
Completely love the NHS. Completely overwhelmed. And because I think largely we have a very reactionary way of practicing medicine, like i.e. we wait until something goes wrong and then deal with it, which is not the best way of doing it. Better to do it before and not even get sick than to wait until you're sick. And so this for me was another thought process that was really kind of driving, well, firstly my desire to even go into nutrition, and secondly the book, which is like if people actually employ these 7 principles in their life, doesn't matter who you are, male, female, tall, thin, whatever, these are going to improve your health for everyone. They're ultimate truths. And genuinely, this is the book that I wish I'd had at the start of my health journey. This is the book I wish I could give every single person, because they can take it away and they're going to feel, they're going to be doing 80% of everything they need to be doing I was about to say perfectly. Imperfectly, 80% of everything they need to be doing in their life. And that's going to bring about an incredible health change, which then in turn will impact, like, hopefully the way that we're seeing health conditions coming up in the NHS, etc. But you're talking about like cost.
Well, tell us about things like, because the skin, I think with the cost of living crisis, like luxuries are going out the window. So fancy kind of hydrofacials and all these expensive beauty and wellness treatments that we love are just kind of becoming unaffordable and inaccessible. But what we're putting in our like the food we're eating is, we are all spending money on food. So what can we do to improve our skin? Like you talk about all these things, skin, beauty, energy, mental health. Like what are the things that we can do just by changing our food and our diets?
You don't know how many people I see that are saying, I want better skin.
Yeah, I want better skin.
The amount they spend on products. I look at all the products they've got, absolute fortune. And have they looked at their diet at all?
Well, it's all about, this is the thing, isn't it? I think we've been so conditioned to think it's all about what you put on the outside. Yeah. But like, what about what's on the inside?
I literally had a client yesterday who's suffering with a skin condition. And I'm like, do you take vitamin D? Do you take any fish oils? And, hundreds of pounds on all these products. And so there are definitely easy fixes for sure. I would say everyone in this country needs to be taking vitamin D for 6 months of the year. That's just a fact. And it's on the NHS website as well. It is on the NHS website. It's a fact. And then omega-3s are also really important. We're seeing more and more how important they are and how many health benefits they bring about in so many different areas. And unfortunately, that's kind of hard to guarantee necessarily from our food system. You can get them from, they're mainly in oily fish, basically. So that's your sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, herring. You can get tinned versions, which are nice and cheap, frozen versions. But also, if you want to kind of cover all bases, you can get a supplement. The good ones are expensive, unfortunately.
I was going to ask about supplements.
Probably better to go food. I mean, I actually go food first on those.
Yeah.
I do recommend the supplement quite frequently to clients because they're not so good at maybe including it in their diet if they can afford it. But it's totally possible to get it in your diet. You're just going to have to hopefully use like tinned and frozen and fresh and mix it up. Like anchovies are so cheap and I think they're delicious and they go on salad. Wonderful.
And there are options, like you said, you know,
Yeah.
it's not like you have to go and buy fresh fish from the fish market. Like you can use these tinned or bottled or preserved versions of fish to get those things into your diet. But you mentioned there about supplements. How much attention do we need to pay to supplements? Or again, should we actually be looking at our diet first and then looking at supplements?
Yeah, I actually shouldn't have even mentioned supplements, if I'm honest. I just only mentioned vitamin D because it's a certain. Those are the only two really that I kind of actually prescribe on any regular basis. Everything else, I'm always trying to go food first. And definitely, you know, I get a question a lot about, should I go fresh? Should I go frozen? Should I go... It doesn't matter. Mix it all up. Get it all in there. The most important thing is to get the vegetables in.
Yeah.
And I would say if you are someone who's trying to be price conscious, maybe try and save that money for the animal products. If you're someone that consumes animal products, so trying to go organic with like the dairy and the meat and things like that. But otherwise with the vegetables, like just get them in there. And also things like whole grains and beans and legumes, like beans and legumes are really cheap, you know, and they're a great way to get protein in there. They're high protein, low fat, high fiber. So they're great for the gut microbiome. There are kind of workarounds. And I would say, yeah, definitely food first over supplements for sure.
I just have to pick up on what you mentioned there about meat and dairy going for the organic, because I often wonder, is it worth it? It's much more expensive to buy organic free range chicken than to buy like the supermarket's own most basic chicken. But like my question is it worth the money? Because what I'm often wondering is the organic really expensive, or is actually the non-organic really way too cheap?
Yeah, which you touched on another really important question I get asked a lot is organic worth it?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's provenance is definitely, that'll be in the next book, all about like where food comes from. And so at the moment, I just wanted to get everyone doing the basics right. But yeah, where our food comes from is really important. It's a really important topic, I think, for future thought as well. But the thing is, you can have your local farmer down the road who produces the most gorgeous like milk and chickens and stuff, and he just hasn't got the organic certification. So it's not a label's not everything. It's much more about asking the question like, how was this animal reared? Like, what was it fed? And I do think the nice thing about kind of being price conscious and trying to save that for the animal products is it naturally makes you reduce consumption of them. The thing is, it's not like most people aren't eating the wrong things. They're maybe not eating them in the optimal proportions. So what happens if naturally these things are more expensive, hopefully you're going to have less of them and start ramping up the things that are cheaper, like the fruits, the vegetables, the beans, the legumes, which is actually much more representative of how your diet ideally should look.
That makes a lot of sense actually. And I mean, there are a lot of myths out there about like food and nutrition. What are some of the most common, I guess, myths or misconceptions that you see or that people come to you saying, like, oh, well, I saw this on the internet. Is this how I should eat?
Gosh, so I mean, it's got to be the superfood thing. Is there a superfood? Like that made it into the book. I get asked that a lot, and my answer is always like, superfoods are normal foods with better marketing.
Yeah,
like there is no single nutrient that is responsible for good health. There is no single nutrient that is responsible for bad health. I think these superfoods have been a way to kind of extort. That's a bit aggressive. Like really expensive money out of people when actually there's much more humble fruits and vegetables that are available that will deliver the same nutritional impact. So yeah, it doesn't have to be expensive, but I think access to good nutrition is, unfortunately, it's not democratic. It's not even all over the UK.
Well, this is
or
something,
the world even.
Yeah, I think this is something I was going to ask, because it is really, you know, there are so many people who could probably benefit from having a nutritionist, but absolutely cannot afford, like they just don't have access to one. And given that you kind of went on that journey yourself of like, researching and there, like you said, there's so much conflicting information out there. For anyone who's starting their own journey and can't afford to go to seek help from a professional, where do they start and how do they start to like navigate this crazy.
Well, luckily, someone's written a book that covers. I genuinely, you really have hit the nail on the head, which is I wanted to democratize access to this information. Obviously, it's quite expensive to come and see me, and actually, I do spend quite a few of the first sessions of my client with all of my clients. It doesn't matter who they are, whether they come in for pregnancy or for skin or for fertility or for diabetes. It doesn't matter what anyone comes in with.
Yeah.
I always end up spending the first few sessions doing exactly the same things because you have to get the fundamentals right before you can do any of the fun, fancy stuff that I spent so long learning at nutrition school. So this is the book that actually every single person should read before they even come to see me and make sure that they're executing. Because you can't do any specific stuff until you've got all of this stuff right first. But actually the thing is, what happens is most people are struggling with the same fundamental issues, and once they start nailing them, they get that improvement they were wanting. They lose the weight, the skin improves, the bloating goes, and then they think, oh well, I don't really need to do any more. And it's true, you don't.
What are those issues, the fundamental issues that most people face?
Well, I mean, there's the things that most people struggle with.
Yeah.
Literally all the 7 principles in the book. Eating. So principle 1, eating more whole foods. Principle 2, trying to eat a diverse diet. We don't include diversity in our diet enough. We've actually changed and manipulated our food system such to optimize it for profit, that instead of growing 7 different kinds of carrots, we now grow 1, and it grows quickly and it grows cheap and it grows fast, and we can get on to the next one. So the variety in our food system has gone down 70% since the 1920s, like natural diversity in the food system.
That's insane.
It's crazy. So you think we've actually got all this choice in the supermarket now, but actually we've got much less. So our gut microbiome is actually the health of it is defined by the diversity within it, and it's never going to be diverse. All these bacteria need so many different types of fiber to grow. They need fiber from nuts and seeds and legumes and fruits and vegetables. Like they need so many different types of fiber in order to be able to flourish and to build that diversity. And if you're only eating within a very small remit, then you're not going to be getting that, and naturally that's going to have negative health implications. So principle 2, varied. Principle 3, talking about fats. People don't really understand fats.
It's still programmed into my brain. Like I have to tell myself that fat isn't bad. Like it's crazy.
Our brain is made of fat.
Yeah.
It's crazy that we would ever think that we can survive on no fat. And then all these low fat products that came out in the market, which were actually high sugar.
Yeah.
And then principle 4, which is reduce refined carbohydrates, which is all those kind of sugary treats that we see in every corner shop, which are absolutely delicious, but they're on every street corner because they're so addictive, because they're so delicious. And, helping people to understand that, look, I mean, I eat them, but it's just understanding, like, fine, if you're going to eat them, but what else can you add into your diet, and making that decision in an informed way. And then the next principle 5, is about liquids. Yeah. Oh, no, fermented foods. Sorry.
Well, we've got fermented foods. It says here, but be aware of liquids. What is there to be aware of with liquids?
So I wanted to talk a little about this because one of the most common things I see in clinic is people don't drink enough water. Like that's really simple, isn't it? Like, and I kind of feel bad, like going, why don't you pop a glass by your desk and by your bed? And people come back and they're like, you know what? I'm drinking water. I'm like, God, you just paid me a fortune today. But it's true. Like there's simple things that people are falling down on, which is like consuming water, but actually being able to, and I've seen it over and over again. And I've also seen over and over again the things that work to help people try and do that naturally. Buying a great like reusable bottle that you can keep in your bag, so you always have water on the go. Just little prompts like that. So attaching it to something you're already doing in your life, really important. And also touching on the whole SSBs, which is sugar sweetened beverages. So this is like the fizzy drinks that have increased massively in terms of like our diets, like availability, and they're really, really difficult for the liver to process. Sugar in liquid form is much more toxic to the body than it is in its normal form.
Really?
People don't know this.
I didn't know that.
Things like talking about alcohol as well. How do you cure a hangover? One of my most common questions. It's about what you've done before, not what you do afterwards. And then, principle. Hang
on. Whilst we're on the topic of fizzy drinks, I just have to ask, diet fizzy drinks.
Look, I mean, of course, I love a Diet Coke or a normal Coke and stuff, but it's not water. Like, it shouldn't be every day. Like,
so for anyone who says, it's okay, I drink fizzy drinks all day, but it's fine because I drink the diet version. No.
It depends, I guess, doesn't it, what you're trying to achieve? Because if you're trying to cut calories, then you're achieving it.
But I think is I very rarely talk about calories
Yeah.
ever. Like I think calories can be quite misleading. Calories are not representative of nutrition. And really we need to look at the nutritional value of our food. And I think also calories create this quite negative, unhealthy mindset of like, you know, there are also these calories that you see on the menus are kind of terrifying. And calories, like 100 calories of nuts is not the same as 100 calories of chocolate. So actually you need to be talking about like the fiber, the nutrients. And you know what? If you start thinking about food in terms of its nutritional value, then you remove that kind of negative mindset and it becomes a thing of joy and pleasure. And that's another thing that was really important to me, that this is a positive book. And as I said earlier about being kind to yourself, like I didn't want it to be a book of restriction. It's not a one size fits all approach. It's very much about like what you can add in and how you can make yourself feel good, not bad.
Amazing. And now the last principle, I feel like we've got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, just do like what you want.
Yeah, just talk us through the last principle, eat mindfully, because I feel like that's one that none of us do. Because
should I do
on the go.
But principle 5, just quickly, which is include more fermented foods, just something that's kind of like got lost in our diet a little bit.
Yeah.
And
What's
really
the easiest and lowest cost way to do that without having to like, because I think that's one of those things that can be like, do I need to go to Planet Organic and buy a £7 tub of kimchi?
No, definitely not. Yogurt. I mean, yogurt, you can get yogurt in every single...
Yeah.
But this is the thing, I talk about a little bit about label reading, because the thing is, I really want to empower people to... I don't want to give them a diet plan that they have to follow and stuff, because then as soon as the real life happens, that's going to go out the window.
Yeah.
I want to give them the information that they can then go and take it away and go into a restaurant and order something that they feel works for their body, or go and stay with a friend for the weekend.
Yeah.
And, like, this is about how it works in real life, not about how to do it perfectly for 1 or 2 weeks. It's about creating sustainable change. So yeah, yogurt is great, but turn that packet over. This is why I want people to learn how to read labels for themselves, so they can decide for themselves in store what works for them and what doesn't. So yeah, turn the label over, look how many ingredients, has it got sugar in there? Does it also have those probiotics that we're looking for? And they will be listed in there. And if it does, great, go for it.
Yeah.
That's fab. So yeah, the fermented foods are really important just to kind of support the probiotics and bacteria and stuff in our gut. And then, principle 7 would be to eat mindfully, because I don't want everything to be just food. You can be eating the perfect diet, but are you breaking it down? Are you absorbing it?
Yeah.
And that's why it's really important. We're all so in this habit now in this day and age of like, you know, people go and they make they get a delivery of food for lunch, or they go and make a lunch really quickly at work and then eat it, gobbling it down in front of a computer.
Yeah.
Highly stressful. You have this thing called the autonomic nervous system, which is your involuntary nervous system. There's 2 parts to it. The sympathetic, which is your fight and flight, which is your running away from a tiger historically. And then your parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest. And they're oppositional as well. So when one's high, the other's low. So when you're sat at a desk reading your stressful work emails, your sympathetic's up here and your rest and digest, your parasympathetic's down here. You're not breaking down and absorbing your food optimally at all. So what you want to do is flip that. So either ideally step away from the desk. I also say take 3 deep breaths, like in through the nose, out through the mouth. It's amazing how it totally changes the pace at which you're functioning, slows down your eating, and connecting more to your food and to the process of eating. And also remembering that the preparation of food is part of digestion. We salivate because we're preparing to digest food. There's digestive enzymes in your saliva. Hydrochloric acid, more digestive enzymes in the stomach. These things need to be produced before you eat the food. And if your body doesn't know it's about to eat, because you're like stress on the computer, oh, wolf, It's
not ready.
It's not ready. And so you can be doing all the wonderful things in the first 6 principles, but unfortunately, if you're not optimizing it, you're not going to be reaping the full benefits of that. And I want people to get as much bang for their buck as possible.
Yeah, I love it. We were talking about cooking earlier today, and obviously some people really like to cook and others don't. But I, as someone who does like to cook, I think just doing the process of cooking gets you into that sort of like rested, relaxed state. But for anybody who is thinking of buying the book, but a bit scared because they're not a cook or they're not particularly capable in the kitchen, are they hard to do? Do you need to be able in the kitchen to be able to make what's in here?
I've always just been a kind of, I've definitely got better at cooking over the years, no doubt, but I'm just a good amateur, you know, and I think all the recipes are very doable. And so it was really important to me that the first quarter of the book is there's 7 nutrition principles, but the last 3 quarters, the majority of it is just a huge recipe Bible, because I think that's how you get people engaged and interested. And you add 1 or 2 of those recipes to your recipe repertoire per week, you're going to be massively increasing the nutritional value of your food. And I think there's tons of stuff in there. There's some really cost-effective things. They're really simple. I hope people agree they're really tasty. But yeah, mostly they're just doable.
Amazing.
Oh, thank you so much for coming
having
and
me.
chatting to us. For anyone that wants to find out more about you, follow along your journey, where's the best place?
So on Instagram, I'm Jennifer Medhurst. On TikTok, I'm the Imperfect Nutritionist. And I also have a weekly newsletter, which you can sign up for on my website, www.jennifermedhurst.com.
And now a book.
And now a book, yes, which is available at all good bookstores.